as much. They approach my mom and start asking her questions about who we are and what our plans are for the night. My little brother stared, whimpering, and stopped eating the Doritos he'd been happily munching on, and I got the impression that my mom was creeped out as well. So the men leave after about 5 minutes and told my mom that they were official campground employees who were just making sure everyone was doing all right. Their truck certainly didn't look official, and they weren't wearing anything that would suggest that they were more than just regular, albeit creepy, dudes wandering around and being nosy. My mom told my brother and I to get in the car and take only a few essentials, like clothes and a bit of food, and we went to my grandmother's house and spent the night there instead. We left the tent at the campsite, giving the illusion that we were still there. The next morning, after we told my grandmother about what had happened and that we were suspicious, we went back to the campsite to gather our things and head home. When we pulled up, we immediately noticed that our stuff had been picked through by someone who wasn't us. There were footprints leading up to our tent, and the zipper was stuck halfway open like someone was trying to close it. It was closed when we left, and they didn't succeed. Our sleeping bags also had boot prints on them. We never saw those guys again, but we still wonder what would have happened if we'd stayed.
Last week, my wife asked me if we could go camping. She loves nature, me, not so much. Nonetheless, I said we could go to make her happy. She is excited as hell, so we pack up all our stuff and head out the very next day. We wake up pretty early and drive out to a small secluded place of land that my parents own. We make camp there and spend a couple of hours setting up the tent and the campsite. By this time it's the middle of the day, so we get ready and go hiking. It's beautiful up there. No cell phones, no people, no worries. It's the fucking bugs that get to me. I can't stand those damn things. After a while of hiking, it starts to drizzle, so we decide to head back. We get back to the campsite just as it's getting dark. We make a fire, eat, roast marshmallows, and tell scary stories. It was a great time, but eventually my wife starts getting a little tired, so we decide to go to sleep. We get in our tent, and I roll out our double sleeping bag and we both get in together. After a while of lying there, my wife starts to shiver. "Are you all right?" I ask. "I'm fine," she says. She keeps shivering and eventually tells me she isn't feeling very well, but doesn't want to ruin our trip. I'm ashamed to admit it, but I was psyched that she said that, because I wanted to get the hell out of there. As I said before, I'm not a big fan of nature. I feel her forehead and she's burning up. I tell her that she may have a fever and that we should probably go home. She looks bummed, but eventually gives in and I get her up and take her to the car. She sits in the car while I pack up our things. In the middle of taking the tent down, I hear her honk the horn a couple of times. I run over to the car and I ask her what's the matter. "I saw someone in the trees above the campsite. I wasn't sure if it was a person, but as soon as I saw them move, I was sure it was someone, so I honked the horn," she says to me, looking pale and panicked. I can tell she is upset, but I don't really believe her. So I just tell her to relax and that I'm almost done packing. I go over to the campsite and start gathering our things outside the tent. I step back into the tent to roll up the sleeping bag, and suddenly I hear my wife yelling my name. It sounds like it came from the woods. What the fuck is she doing out there, I say to myself. Help, Jack! My leg is bleeding! I rush out of the tent and look toward where I heard the scream. I glance over to the car and see she is asleep in the passenger seat. A huge wave of fear passes over me. I'm standing there, paralyzed, and then I hear the voice in the woods again. This time, it's behind me. Help me, Jack. Please. It sounds like my wife, but somewhat off, too raspy and deep. At this point, I'm fucking terrified, and I just want to get the hell out of there. I quickly grab most of our things and shove them in the car. I left the tent, but I didn't even care. I got in the car and sped away from that place as fast as I could. When we finally got home, I asked my wife to tell me exactly what she saw when she was in the car. She said it was pale, and she thought it was a naked person crawling behind some trees. She saw them stand up against a tree, and that's when she honked the horn and they dropped down and crawled away. This is why I hate nature.
I want to start this by saying this is taking a lot for me to finally talk about. I've kept it a secret from my family, and for my friends who were a part of it, we never talked about what happened after that day. But I want to give you a backstory before I drive into details. I've never been much for the city, so living in the suburbs outside of one of the largest cities in Pennsylvania is not my ideal place to live. It's a small town with only a few thousand people living in it, but only a 5-minute drive to the middle of downtown. My friends and I, country boys at heart, frequently would have fires or go fishing and even go out on camping trips when we had the chance. My two best friends and I all played football together and have grown up attached to each other at the hip. We did everything together, so leaving for college was a scary thought, and the not-so-distant future as well. For our last summer together, after our senior year, we decided to go on one last camping trip before we went our separate ways. My two best friends, Kevin and Buddha, his real name is Kyle, but only his parents call him that, wanted to go somewhere that we had never gone camping before. We all agreed to go down to Allegheny National Forest for a weekend of fishing, drinking, and reminiscing. I know, underage drinking, but we were young and dumb, so on Thursday we packed up all of our supplies, fishing poles, bait, beer, and food, and left early Friday morning. The trip took a little over 4 hours, with frequent stops at rest stops to get snacks and drinks because of our lack of planning for the drive. Our parents made sure that we all had our cell phones in case something happened and we needed to call them. Of course, I didn't understand the point of that. If anything happened, they were 4 hours away, but naturally we took them just to make them happy. When we got to the camping area, we kept driving. Being the daredevils that we were, we wanted to be far away from anyone else to give it a real camping feel. We found a beautiful spot right on the edge of the lake, which we all agreed would be a perfect spot to pitch our tent. Because we love to fish, the first thing we did after we got our fire pit and tent ready was take our canoe straight for the lake. It was a beautiful day for fishing. The sun was shining without a cloud in the sky. I even caught a few bass for dinner. So that night we ate up the fish, drank half a case of beer, and told scary stories to freak each other out around the campfire. But something in the back of my mind told me that we were being watched. There were no signs of anyone else there for me to be alarmed, so I didn't say anything to the guys. But it was that type of feeling, almost a sixth sense, saying someone or something is there, just outside the light of the fire. I shook it off and decided to go to bed so I could stop freaking myself out or letting them see me starting to be afraid. The next day we slowly woke up and crawled out of the tent one by one. I cooked up some bacon and eggs, which we had brought in our cooler, and made a delicious plate for each of us. Kevin suggested that we go exploring through the woods, and since I love hiking, I was the first to jump out of my seat. We explored for a few hours, drank a few more beers, cooked up some more food, then took the boat out for some more fishing. We fished for a few hours in the middle of the calm lake. The sun was beginning to set, but night fishing was my cup of tea. But again, I got the feeling we were being watched. This time I couldn't help it. I asked my two best friends if they felt as if they were really alone out on the lake, and the color from both of their faces faded as they stared at me. Kevin and Buddha agreed they felt as if someone was watching us, and Buddha even said he felt the same way last night without me even mentioning my feelings of last night. At this point we were all a little worried, but continued to fish because no one wanted to suggest that we leave or go back to shore. It was dark on the lake, with only our small lantern and glowing stick at the ends of our fishing rods. With what seemed like the blink of an eye, we all turned to see a small light in the woods across the lake. The light began to grow to the point it looked like a spotlight in the darkness, not pointing at the spot specifically, but in every direction. We were frozen with fear. I didn't know what to do but stare at it. I heard Kevin mumble, What the hell is that?" I immediately got extremely dizzy, and I believe I passed out. Or I got knocked out, I'm not sure. All I know is everything went black. I couldn't see the light, our lantern, or the glowing sticks anymore. The next memory I have is waking up in our tent. Kevin and Buddha were in their sleeping bags, both with a different pair of clothes on from the night before. I had pajamas on that I didn't even remember packing, and my side hurt like there was a razor blade in it. I got out of the tent, and there was a fire in our fire pit with bacon cooking in the pan. Kevin and Buddha woke up equally as confused, asking me what had happened. I personally had no idea. They both described a similar pain throbbing in their sides. I lifted my shirt to see if maybe I had a pine needle jabbed into me without me knowing, and all of our eyes were fixed on the small, now scarred cut on my side. My mind was racing. I had never got cut on my side, much less long enough ago for it to heal and scar. Kevin and Buddha lifted their shirts to find similar scars in the same location on their bodies. Buddha began to freak out now. Our canoe was tied up. The fire was started with breakfast cooking. Our fishing poles precisely spaced out, leaning up against a tree, had scars on our sides, and we had no idea how we got changed or into our tents. We were terrified. Without looking for an explanation, we packed our things and left immediately. None of us knew what had happened and had no memory after everything went dark. We were too afraid to tell our parents or anyone else. They may even be upset with me sharing this story on Reddit, but I need help. I need to know if this has happened to other people that went camping in the Allegheny Forest, or if this is our own terrible nightmare.
I love camping, especially with friends, as it takes away from the fear factor you inevitably get when it's dark and you start hearing animals making noises around your tent. This was about 10 years ago or so I was around 16 and was with two friends about the same age. We were all male. This happened in the rural countryside of the UK, and we knew a nice secluded spot in the woods with a flat bit of grass. You get to it, and you have to walk along this dirt trail for a couple of miles, and at a point you turn off the trail and go down a very steep hill, which is very difficult to navigate even during the day, as it's so overgrown. From the path, you wouldn't know what a perfect camping spot it is from up there. I should also mention this trail takes you a fair way from any roads, houses and lights, so it's really cut off and gives you that feeling you're really fending for yourself. No cheeky takeaway halfway through the night. So we're all having a great time, as you do. We had a fire blazing before it got dark, and we were cooking off of it, so we had a hearty hot meal before bed. It soon got dark, so we all huddled around the fire and started talking about typical teenager stuff long through the night. It was probably around 1:30 a.m. when we noticed two lights close together, like eyes, coming from the trail, but the lights gave off some kind of light a torch would. Is someone holding two torches in each hand, we thought. We watched the lights for a bit, and it's shining down at us so we can't see what's holding them, but we freak out because we think it could be the police, because it's illegal to have a fire while camping without permission in the UK, or some kind of weird monster. So we watch for a bit, and it doesn't move, and no one calls out. Eventually, we see it slowly moving closer, so we rushed inside the tent and sat still and listened. We didn't hear much, and soon calmed down and figured it must just be someone curious what the fire was and went on their way. But the next morning, we woke up to the tent door open, and none of us had got up in the night and forgot to close it. We looked around and saw the grass had been disturbed coming down the hill, but we were really confused what the person did. I still get chills imagining some old creep just staring at us, sleeping. I still go camping, sometimes alone as well, and I don't worry too much about it happening again. I carry a handheld.